बेसब्री से इंतजार करता हूँ आज के समय का, कि हम लोगों को इस तरह के लाभप्रद व्याख्यान को सुनने को अवसर मिलेगा। तो आप सभी श्रोताओं का और हमारी मुख्य वक्त्री महोदया का मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ। और जैसा कि हम लोग जानते हैं कि मंदिरों में लोग कहते हैं सैर करने नहीं जाया जाता है, मंदिरों में दर्शन करने जाया जाता है। और किस लिए जाया जाता है? क्योंकि बंदे तद्गुण लब्धये, हम भी उस मार्ग पर चल सकें। तो इस व्याख्यान माला के महत्व के संदर्भ में ज्यादा जरूरत नहीं है कहने की, लेकिन मेरा जो अनुभव है, मैं मानता हूं कि यह व्याख्यान माला हमारे जीवन की धारा बदलकर इतिहास, संस्कृति एवं कला के प्रति नैसर्गिक प्रेम एवं अनुराग पैदा करेगी। क्योंकि हम लेमैन हैं अभी, लेकिन जब इस तरह के व्याख्यान सुनते हैं तो स्वाभाविक रूप से हमारी जिज्ञासा बढ़ती है। और ऐसा मेरा पूरा विश्वास है, क्योंकि कला एक मूक काव्य है। इसमें कलाकारों की शताब्दियों का परिश्रम तो है ही, हमारी संस्कृति एवं सभ्यता के भी परिचायक है। तो कला में लोक मंगल भावना भी प्रस्फुटित होती है। तो इसको आप लोग साक्षात देखेंगे, सुनेंगे, दर्शन करेंगे। और मैं आदरणीय पवन जी का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ कि इसी तरह से आप हम लोगों को अपने ज्ञान से प्लावित करती रहें। और सभी श्रोताओं का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। और आप लोगों के जो प्रश्न है वो आप जरूर इसमें लिखते रहेंगे। हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे कि इसमें यथासंभव उसका समावेश करेंगे। धन्यवाद, अभिवादन सभी का।
Okay. Welcome everybody. So आज हम उड़ीसा के मंदिरों के बारे में चर्चा करेंगे बहुत विस्तार में। हमने कश्मीर टेम्पल्स देखे, वेस्टर्न इंडियन टेम्पल्स देखे, देन सेंट्रल इंडियन टेम्पल्स, खजुराहो, है ना? We visited all those temples last time. And today we are going to go over the various Orisan temples today. Okay. So Orissa temples, because of their separate regional development, some parts of East Indian temple have a very different terminology. I think I mentioned this earlier also. Than what is being used, elsewhere in India. Like we have the Mukhamandap, the Jangha, the Mahamandap, Garbhgraha, all these different, the Pitha, the Vedibandh, Jagati. These are the different parts of the temple that we have been using the terms in North Indian temples. But as we move towards Orisan temples, the terminology kind of changes in a very, very big way, although they mean the same. Like if we go to South India, the temple is also called a Vimana, or in Northern India, we call it a Mandir. So similarly, in Orisan vocabulary or terminology, we call it a Deol. Deol is nothing but a place where devtaon ka jahan vaas hai na? So Deol, it's called. So there are various art historians who have worked on it, say like Manmohan Ganguly, N.K. Bose, etc. So the very interesting part is that they all studied the ancient Vastu Shilp texts, the architectural treatises that were, totally talking about the making of these temples and what is the importance of the placement of various imagery inside the temple and outside the temple, etc., etc. And they kind of correlated these texts with the local Shilpis or also the Sthapatis. And this is how then they came to a holistic approach. And that's how they were able to interpret as to they were able to make a connection between what was written in the text and what the actual practitioners, what terms they were using. And by making this connection, they were able to learn a lot more from both these sources. And that's how we get lots of information about Orisen temples as such. And there, Vastu Prakash, Bhuvan Pradeep, etc. There are many, many different, Orisen texts that have, architectural texts that have come down to us. I think I haven't started my slideshow. Let me do that. There you go. Yes. Okay. Okay. So let's just briefly, quickly, we will look at the different elements of Orisen temples and what they are called. It's not very different from what we have been learning so far. So they actually, East Indian temple combines northern style, tower or the shikhar in that sense, you can say. But we, earlier temples, we saw it was going like this. But in Orisen temples, it almost forms a, straight line, and only almost towards the apex, it tries to, become a kind of a curvy linear. Okay. So this is typical style of the Orisen temple shikhar or the superstructure, and which is also called the Gandhi. Okay. This area, okay, which we were calling shikhar earlier, this is called the Gandhi. And the entire temple, I've told you, Rekha, it's called a Deol. So if it is, as we already know, there are two types, no, the Rekha Shikhar and the Shekhari Shikhar. So in this case, this is called the Rekha Deol, because we can see there are no minor, those shringas or the shikhars which are there. This is straight line. It's going like this. And of course, it's divided into these various Bhumi Amlakas. And they also define the different levels or the different stories of the temple. So the first Bhumi, second Bhumi, etc. So we can say this is a 10-story temple here. 10 Bhumis are there. Then this is, of course, the Bhisma. Bhisma is nothing but the skandha or the shoulders of the temple. And then Beki. Beki is nothing but the neck, right? So these are the terms which are used in the local Orisen language. And same terms are being used here in the context of the temple. Then, of course, you have the Amlaka and the Kharpuri, which is this inverted bell, and then the Kalash on top. And this entire area is called as the Mastak area. Mastak, we all know, the head part of the human anatomy. Okay. And the joining of the Jangha or the walls of the temple and the Shikhar on top, this part is called the Varanda, or earlier we called it Varandika. So there is not much of a difference. And this normally in Orisen temple, the walls are divided into two parts, the Talajangha and the Uparjangha. So the very name suggests that Talajangha is the lower part, Uparjangha is the upper part, and they are joined together by a bandhana. Again, something that is tied together. Okay. So if you look at this diagram, this is the bandhana, which is tying together these Uparjangha and the Talajangha. And normally they do not stand on a high platform. Okay. And unlike what we saw, in Khajuraho temples and some of the Rajasthan temples also, Kashmir temples also, there was a very, very high platform that we saw. Okay. And the lower part is called the Pabhaga, what we were saying as Vedi Bandha earlier. All right. So that's called a Pabhaga. And these are the different divisions. So we were calling this as the main Bhadra, the central portion. Then we called it the Pratibhadra, then the, Karnaratha or Pratiratha, the main Ratha here. So similarly, here in Orisen language, we will call it the Rahapaga, the Anartha Paga, and the Kanika Paga. Kanika is same as the Karnaratha. Okay. And also the platform, wherever it is there, it is called the Pista, all right, or the platform. The wall is also called the Bada. Bada means anything which is, blocking, na? Bad, jisko hum kehte hain. खेतों के आसपास लगाते हैं बाड़, so something that you are obstructing, so that's the wall portion. So here, and the wall portion is divided into two parts. Okay, and the gandi is of course basically the trunk portion, the shikhar portion. All right, so this is how it is. We look at the, and then of course there are different parts of the Orison temple. What we are looking at right now is basically the Garbhagriha and the superstructure on top of that. And then with the, then there is a, mandap or a hall also, right, which is some, attached to this particular Rekha Deol, and which is also called as the Jagmohan. Okay, Jagmohan will not have this kind of a superstructure. We have seen in Khajuraho temples, it normally has that Pidha kind of a superstructure with a very, very big ghanta on top, or sometimes the kalash is also there, right? Okay. So let's see the detail of the Jagmohan. It's called a Jagmohan. So these elements, these are called the different Pidhas. Pidha, jisko hum kehte hain, in local language, a squat kind of seating, this very, very short legs it has. So this each level, these are called the different pidhas. All right. And sometimes you may have, a division of this superstructure also. And this portion is called the kanti. And these two, separately can also be called the potlas. And then again, you'll have the beki here, the ghanta, the amlaka, the kalashya. The Kharpuri is, of course, the head here. This okay. And so these are the pidhas. Then same thing, Uparjanga, Talajanga, Pabhaga, Bandhana, and Varandika or Varanda. And this entire portion is called the Bada or the Bada, Gandi, and Mastak. So this is the typical different elements of the Pidha Deol. Pidha is this shape, or the famsana, jisko hum kehte hain, right? Or, these are the different names that we call. And yeah, okay. I spoke about these Gavakshas earlier also. So we have seen in all the North Indian temples and sometimes in South Indian temples also, the entire shikhar or the superstructure is made up of these, minute chandrashalas or the gavakshas that we have been talking about so often. Okay. So there is kind of a mesh or the jal, not just by overlap, but it's kind of through a clever, shift, I would say, by, fragmenting. Like, say, if this is one chandrashala or a gavaksha. So if you divide it into two parts, and then the central portion remains like this, and the two parts join like this. So there's a kind of I would say fragmentation of the same unit, and in that way it kind of rises in a particular meter or a rhythm when you see shikhar. So like in poetry you have meter, so we call it Chandomay, there is a rhythmic cycle, how you start and end the poetry. So the next line also ends in the same fashion, right? So it's analogy, I would say, to any kind of a tala or a cyclical pattern that we have. Like in music also, we have the sam and the visham. So, but, why do we enjoy the end part of any, mukra? But because it ends on the sum, although in between it may, go, offbeat, right? We say like this, it is offbeat, but when it is ending on sum, then last tal we will put like this. So same thing is happening here also, if you can follow some, if it's some basic knowledge of classical music or just plain music also. So in fact, folk dancers follow very, very simple pattern of tal, 4, 8, 16 matras. In classical music, it gets little complicated. In fact, it remains, it stays small in the beginning, and then of course, it goes up and then, comes down and meets the sum. Okay. So these kinds of cyclical patterns are seen in traditional arts. And it's in visual arts, this kind of repetition or sequencing, I would say, is also a very complex architectural ornament. Okay, that's how the shikhar is ornamented with this kind of alankar, which are, I mean, in poetics, we call them alankars, right? So this is, I would say, it doesn't have any, meaning as such, or any figurative or symbolic or abstract. It's just, an art in abstraction. It's called chandomay, this kind of a design. So we need to keep this in mind whenever we are looking at the, any shikhar and the kind of decoration that it has. So we'll go through some of the decorative elements of Orisen temples. So the bho motif, which we encounter in all the most of the Orisen temples, especially of the later period. All right. So the bho and the kirti mukha represent, of course, the vital energy of nature and profusion of mythical and worldly forms put together. And it is believed to ward off evil eye, and acts as a protective and auspicious motif on temple walls. And there are very many different kinds of this motif, as it's totally a decorative motif. So in Orisen temples, we spoke about this particular, motif earlier, which we called as Kirti Mukha, right? So in Orisen architecture, the Kirti Mukha is, of course, sometimes it's there just by itself, but also, for most part, it will be followed by this, a double looped Chandrashala at the back. And sometimes you will have these two guardians also on the two sides. So this entire assembly is called a bho motif. And inside, sometimes you will have a sculpture also like this. Here you can see Shiva in the form of the Nataraj. Okay, this is a very famous, very popular decorative motif that you will find on Orisen walls. Okay. Then this is another motif, the Gajakranta Singha. Okay, I'm showing you from Konark Temple. So these are mostly a pair of large sculptures on either side of the temple, bases of the temple you will find, where there is a lion which is almost rearing about a very kneeling elephant or subjugated elephant. Sometimes he holds a man also, like, prostrating on his side. Right now you can see he's looking at the viewer here. So this actually symbolizes the conquest of spiritual power over worldly power. Okay, the pouncing of the lion on the elephant. And it is also because elephants are also associated with rains. So it is also seen as the sun's triumph over the rains, right? Because it's pouncing on the elephant. Then, of course, the Vyala or the Jagrit that we have seen earlier. And normally in Orisen temples, you will find this particular motif on the Kapili wall or the Sandhik Sthal or Sandhik Kshetra. What is that? The wall which joins the Garbhagriha and the Jagmohan or the main mandap. That's called the Kapili wall or the Sandhisthal. All right. So this kind of Vyala or the leonine monster we have seen, it can have different faces. Here it has a face of you can see an elephant here, and of course the body is that of a lion, and there are two warriors here. Of course, there's the warrior sitting who's actually, fit to be riding the Vyal or the Shardul is here shown as a female here, and there is another warrior here with a, kind of a knife or a sword and a shield in another hand. Okay, so I think we have discussed about this in great detail, so I don't see any reason why. Then, of course, the Naginis, Nagas, the couples, entwined together, the Surasundaris, the Apsaras. All right. So these are very, very beautiful sculptures, which you will find in abundance on the Orisen temple walls. Okay. And of course, there are a lot of erotic sculptures also. I mean, it's not only Khajuraho temples, but it was pan-Indian phenomenon of that, medieval period, where right from Kashmir, Rajasthan, of course, I don't have the time right now to show different temples from different regions in in India, which they all have erotic sculptures. So it's not something that only Khajuraho temples have, just that Khajuraho temples have earned this, notoriety in this respect. And also, let me tell you that it's only about less than 10% of the entire sculptures which are there on Khajuraho temple walls. It does not even constitute 10% of those entire sculptures that we have already seen. So it's a sad state of affairs that those magnificent temples are just known for this one characteristic of theirs. Yeah. Okay. So now we will talk about different temples, having spoken about the different decorative elements. And wait, I think I want to also tell you. Yeah, I didn't explain to you these three parts, no. So these are again, architectural elements, but are, used as decorative elements. So these are, of course, this is called the Pidha Mundi. Pidha Mundi is very, very similar to the Pidha Deol that we have, the Jagmohan superstructure. So you have the Pidhas here, different Pidhas, and the Amlaka on top. Then you have the Khakra Mundi. Khakra Mundi is Khakra is the local name for some kind of a big pumpkin in the local language. Okay. So you have Kalash here on top, here, and the Ghanta on top. So this kind of a superstructure is called the Khakra Mundi. And then finally we have the Kalash in the center here on top, and then you have a Chandrashala or a Gavaksha on top. So these kind of structures you will find in abundance on Orison temple walls. And what do? Like, probably here you will have, small sculpture on the wall, just how we have the Bhadras and the Pratibhadras, the Kandrathas, etc. So inside you will have some kind of, divinity, Parivar Devta, and the superstructure. We learnt about those samsanas, in Rajasthan temples. So similarly, these are the three kinds of, superstructures. Or in Kashmir temples, we saw those trefoil arches, which were capping the niches. Similarly, in Orison temples, you will have these three kinds of structures, which will cap the niches of the walls, okay, where you have different divinities, right? So this Parashurameshvara temple, 620 ED, and dedicated to Shiva, the very name suggests. And this is the best preserved of the early temples at Bhubaneswar. Mind you, Bhubaneswar being the capital city, it's a metro city, but in Bhubaneswar city itself, there are hundreds of temples, and that's why it's called the city of temples. And you don't even need to go anywhere outside the city limits. They're all right there. It's such a treat for a visitor to visit this enormous number of temples situated right inside the city. So right now it is, of course, west facing, and we are viewing it from the southwest right now. And this is the early architectural style, which is, continued and elaborated in later Orison temples. Okay. So the lower becomes, the shikhar, of course, becomes more refined in profile later on with the elaboration of its, vertical piers like this. These are now here you can very clearly see these Bhumi Amlakas. So the different levels. This is the, Amlaka on the Shikhar. So looking at it, you can clearly see it is a Pancharatha temple, 1, 2, 3. And same divisions you can see here also, right? 1, 2, and this is the Karna is missing. So there are only 3 Bhadras you can see on this side and this side. But the Shikhar has Pancharatha Shikhar. Okay. So this is the Rahapaga, Anartha Paga, and the Kanika Paga. This is how you will differentiate these two. Okay. So the Shikhar is patterned as a series of horizontal ribs and vertical bands. Okay. And the arched motifs form the background decorations here. Okay. So these are all the arched motifs that you see the Gavakshas on these different pairs here. Okay. So this is basically the plan or the floor plan of the temple here. So by looking at this, you can see it's a pillared mandap here you have. And you can see there are 2 entrances. One is, of course, from the west side. Look at the compass here. This is direction of north. So this is west facing. If this is west facing, then this is the south. So we can clearly see there are 2 entrances here. And there are these windows here. Jali windows also are there on this wall. And it's a pillared hypostyle mandapam here. And there is a Shivlinga inside. There is no inside Pradakshina Path here. This is a very, very basic. Okay. And these are the Vedibandh moldings that we have been studying, the Kura, Kumbha, Kalash, Antarpata, and the Kapotapatli. So the Kalash here, you can see it's kind of little bit flattish here. It's not, that big around that we have seen earlier. And the Kapotapatli here, it has these decorations of the Gavakshas, the Gees, the Vidyadharas, and etc. Okay. Fine. Now, so here you can see very, very clearly the 5 different divisions of the Shikhar here. And on this side, you can see this is the adjoining Mandapam or the Jagmohan, as we call it in Orisian language. So this is, of course, the other side of the southern side of the entrance that we are looking at. And this is the Jali in the wall. And this side, this is the main entrance. Okay. And there isn't any, icon of Nandi on the grounds, although this whole, the temple precinct contains a lingam. All right. But there is no Nandi here. And the main entrance is through the west from this side, which we will see now soon. So this is the main entrance on the west side, right? And you have the Gajalakshmi here on the top of the lintel here. You can see very clearly here. And there is a Linga Puja here. And these are very, very interesting Jal Vatayans. Vatayan means khidki or window, and Jal means a mesh kind of thing. But it is not a regular geometrical mesh that we are looking at. Yeah, and this is called the Parsh Swastik stands. All right. So there are in the upper register, you have different dancers here, and the lower ones have musicians here. You have different divinities, the Purn Kalash, the Ghat here. So all these auspicious symbols are present on the door jamb also. Okay. So here, interesting thing is, if we look closely, not both the elephants are kind of pouring unguents or the water on Devi Lakshmi, but here look at this elephant. He is, in fact, still he's carrying that water pot in his trunk and almost ready to do that. Okay. So yes, and here we see this is a 2-level Jagmohan. There are 2 pidhas here. So this actually, and the connection or the joining of the Jagmohan and the main Rekha Deol is, I would say it's still in its very, very primitive or the initial stage, and it is a little bit still tentative, which we will find that in later temples, it kind of becomes more and more refined. Yeah. Yeah, this is, of course, the detail that I wanted to show you. So this is the Parsh Swastik stance that I was talking about. These are the dancers, and here, these are the musicians. So the window has been designed in such a way that it is very, very appealing. And on the wall, we find Lakulish, Ganesh, Veerbhadra, Saptamatrika, Surya, Brahma. Sometimes on one of the walls, in fact, there is a sculpture of Buddha also, because we all know, or it was the Kalinga War, right, which actually was instrumental in converting Ashoka to Buddhism. And so, in fact, there is a lot of Buddhist influence, and there are a whole lot of Buddhist monuments that we find in Orissa, ancient monuments, even today, the Ratnagiri, Lalitgiri. Of course, the Udayagiri monuments are all Jain monuments. Okay. So there were a lot of Jain influence also here. So this is, of course, we are looking at the eastern Bhadra niche. Okay, so eastern means it will be at the back, right? Bang opposite, because we are entering the temple from the western side. And this is the Bhadra niche, or the main niche that we have in the center. And normally these niches will have the Parivar Devtas. So if the temple is dedicated to Shiva, you may have Parvati, Ganesh, Kartikeya, etc. in these main niches. Yeah. So here we can clearly see Kartikeya, who's sitting in Lalitasan here, and his Vahan is here, peacock. You can see clearly he's holding a spear here. And this, tripartite kind of a crown, this is also very, very typical of Kartikeya's iconography. Most of the time you will find him wearing this. Okay. Yeah, and he's the warrior son of Shiva. Normally you will find him holding a spear, and he's sitting on a throne. So now this particular niche by itself also is, you are getting that impression that you are entering a temple, right? So you'll have the Makar Torans here, you'll have Ganga Yamuna here at the door jambs at the base here. So similar Dwar Shakhas, you'll have the Lalat Bimb here, and then the superstructure also. So this is the decorative motive. So this is not actually a temple, but it is made in the shape of the actual temple. So all these are decorative motifs, as if there is another shikha which is rising on top here on this niche here. Okay, yeah. So there is this, these are different images I wanted to show you. Lakulish is on the east face of the tower or the shikhar. And here Shiva is, shown as a beggar, asking for alms. Parvati, south face of the tower here. Okay. So very, very finely worked decorative panels are there on Orissan walls, for that matter. Okay. So with this, now we will come to the next temple, the Mukteshvara temple. Very, very small temple, but very well decorated, and was probably, built during the Somvanshi dynasty. All right. Still, it consists of the Jagmohan and Deol only. There are no additional elements that we find in later temples, but it has, more interior decoration, and somehow very, very slimmer spire, or the shikhar that we saw in the earlier Parashurameshvara temple, which is its predecessor. It is of much later time. And the join between the Pidha Deol and the Rekha Deol has become, is more rational here, unlike the earlier one, where it was, very tentative, or there was a crude joint, which this is how they were connected together. Okay, because it's obvious that Pidha roof, or the Pidha, shikhar, by this time had assumed its characteristic triangular form, which, this form was missing in the earlier temple that we saw. Okay, the temple again faces west and dedicated to Shiva. There is a lingam which is there inside the temple, but there is no Nandi here also in this temple. A small, almost a waist-high wall that you can see, which is going around the entire temple, and it has the same kind of projections that you find inside the on the temple walls also. So same projections are seen in this wall also, and the exterior niche sculptures. These sculptures also, in fact, they must have been of exceptional quality, but very few have survived today. So this is basically the plan of the Mukteshwar temple, right? So Pancharatha in plan here, you can see the five. This is the Garbhgraha, this is the Jagmohan, this is the entrance, and this is the Antaral here, north here, so entering from the west here. And these are, of course, the Jagmohan balconies that you see, the transepts or the protuberances on the Jagmohan here. And this is the vestibule here. Okay. So, of course, it's now you can see the intricacy of the carving here, gem of Odissan architecture. An outstanding feature of this temple is, of course, the attractive entrance gateway that we will see very soon, the Toran, okay, which actually is a unique feature of only this particular temple. We have seen this Toran feature in the Western Indian temples, the Modera Sun temple, all these temples, the Mahavir temple, there was a Toran. Okay. But in Odissan temple, this is the only temple where we find a very, very magnificent temple. 3-divisioned wall with 1 row of sculptures you have here. See, there are 3 divisions here. Okay. And again, you see the Pancharatha Shikhar here, the central one, the middle one, the Pratiratha and the Karna, yeah. Okay. Or Rapaga, Anartha and the Karnapaga. The Varandika or Varanda, the Bada, which is divided into here. These are the main niches of and here you can clearly see it's almost looking like a temple here by itself. So in fact, the mandap also has the same scheme of decoration as the sanctum with addition of this jali or this jalvatayan that you have here in the center as a protuberance. So there is no sculpture here, but for letting in the air and light, there are on both 2 sides. All right, on the northern side and the southern side, you have these 2. And of course, these are all the niches where you have the different divinities, which were at time stationed, but right now they are empty. Yeah. And here you see that very popular bow motif that I had shown you earlier. And these are all the gavakshas, the decorative. Yeah. And this is the mesh of those small gavakshas or the chandrashalas here. And this is, of course, the very famous Toran or the architrave, which the Mukteshvara temple is so very famous for. And here at the base, I want you to look at here. So at the joint of this, corner, you can see 2 Gajakrant Singhas, all right, almost having a common body in the center here. Yeah, so this is how they are presented as the pillar bases also, right? And normally, of course, they are present at the entrance of the temple. And here you can see this very beautiful, thick toran and different kinds of these, bells and the, manikas, etc. are hanging here. In the garland motif is there. Then the amlaka here on top. And these are the cushioned capitals which we will encounter in later temples. We will see in Elephanta or in Ellora, etc. As we move southward. And here in the center, of course, you have these gavakshas, and where you have some kind of faces which are protruding from there. And this entire thing is being issued from there are these 2 makars here, makar toran here, this is called. Okay, fine. And this, I'm showing you the detail of that bow motif here. And you can see here the intricacy of the carving, they're all made up of sandstone, these temples here. And this is a very interesting motif here. These 2 here you can see on the wall. So the ladies with the half open door, she's waiting, right? So it tells you, lot of questions come to you in your mind as to what she's doing here. So, there is no direct, there is no direct meaning to it. But in poetics or in Sanskrit literature, we say there is dhvani, right? There is some kind of a suggestion that if a lady is standing like this with half open door, probably she's waiting for somebody. So in that sense, it is not only that, as I had said earlier also, in fact, Vishnu Dharmotar Puran and many, many Vastu texts, Natya Shastra also talks about it, that all the basic elements of any art, they are applicable to different arts, whether it is poetics, whether it is, shilp, or it is painting, it's architecture, all those, rules are applicable. And similarly, the alankars or the dhvani that you have in poetics or in literature, same things you can find in architecture also, or in architectural decorations also. I already gave you an example of, that Chandomay, the rhythmic pattern, that was kind of an alankar, or there was some kind of a music that we could see here also. There is a kind of a progression that we can see. And similarly, this is called a suggestive, sculpture. So there is dhvani in this, I would say that. Okay. So this is the platform that I was talking about here, the boundary. And this motif, Marlo, in English we call it. In Sanskrit we call it Kapi Shirsha. Kapi means monkey, Shirsha means head. So it almost imitates the head of a monkey. So normally this motif you will find on fort walls. Fort walls are normally, topped by this kind of a Marlo design, right? Okay. So this is, of course, the detail that we are seeing, the central niche on the Garbhagriha walls, outside Garbhagriha, the detail of this. So these nag, entwined around the temple, this becomes a very, very popular motif in Orisian temples. And this is very unique feature of Mukteshvara temple, that the inside the ceiling is also carved in almost a similar fashion what we saw in the Western Indian temples, the coffered cusp, all right, and there is a pendant inside in the center like this, and the shape is that of a lantern, right? What we encountered this in Kashmir temple, the Pandrithan temple had a similar kind of lantern ceiling on top, right? So here we find these two features of Western India. The Toran is there, and this kind of a ceiling also we are encountering here. Okay. And this I have already spoken about, the Jagrat motif earlier. And this is mostly present on the Kapili, or the Sandhisthal of the temple. Okay. Then we will talk about Raja Rani temple. Very unique in the sense we just now saw both the Rekha Diols. All right, this was the shape, but here we are seeing the miniature spires or the shikhars. So this is a Shekhri Shikhar, a 10th century CE or beginning of 11th century, I would say. There are, different Karna Shringas, Ura Shringas, etc., etc. And it has sculptural excellence, I would say, you will agree when I show you some of them. And of course, the Panchratha in Sanctum is there, divided into 5, Vedibandh with 5 moldings, same moldings, but with much more elaborated decorations that we have here. Okay. Let me take you to the next sample. Yeah. So the increase in the height of the temple is, introduced by introducing a platform here, or a pitha, right? And Pabhaga moldings were increased from 5 from 4. Already earlier there were 4 in the earlier temples, but those typical 5 moldings that I spoke about, all those moldings are present here. Okay. And now here you can see very, very clearly. Sorry. So this is a Shekhri Shikhar. These are minor Shringas, or the Shikhars you can see here. This is the Mool Manjri in the center, the big Amlaka on top, the Pidha Diol here, the Jagmohan, and the Kalash on top. And this is, of course, the entrance here, where on one side you have the Naga figure, going around the pillar, and on the other side you have the Nagin, the couple here. There are images of the river goddesses here also. So in fact, this is again a very, very beautifully sculpted temple that we will see some of the sculptures. So here they have such, beautiful, the offsets are so much that almost the Garbhagriha looks like a star, but it's not. The basic plan still remains this, right? It's almost I would say not a perfect square, but almost aiming to be a square here. But these are the niches that you have on the outer wall, right? Which kind of makes it look almost like a star-like projections. And these are, of course, the Jalvatayans on the two sides, the two transepts of the Jagmohan that we have here. This is the Antral, this is the entrance here. Okay. In fact, there is a lot of emphasis which is put here on the height and the monumentality of this particular temple. Here you can see the wealth and the intricacy of the various sculptures that you have on the Garbhagriha wall here, right? So on the Karnarathas, I have told you there are 8 points, and normally in most of the Indian temples you will find the positioning of the Ashtadikpalas, the guardians of the 8 directions, which are located here, right? So here you can see one here, and then they are intercepted. So these are called the Salilantaras. Salil, I told you, beautiful. Antar is the interval. So so this is the main Rahapaga, the Anartha, the Karna, and these are called the Salilantaras, where you find a lot of Alaskanyas, Apsaras, the Vyala figures normally you will find here. And look at the, modeling of these very, very beautiful Alaskanyas or the Shalbanjikas that you will find on these temple walls. And of course, there are some erotic sculptures also, which are present on these, especially on Rajarani temple. And here you can see that motif I was talking about, the Gajakranta Singha as the pillar base here. You have the elephants here at the base, and you have the lion on top. There are 3 lions, 3 elephants here at the base here. And there are Navgrahas on top, and an image of Lakulish. Oh, this is another very, very beautiful close-up of the Garbhagriha outer wall that we just looked at. And this is, of course, the Jagmohan. We are looking at the north and the south side, one of the sides. And again, these are the Gajakranta Singhas, the serpents which are entwining around the pillar. So now here, another feature is new, which is added here. So the window is not covered by a mesh of a stone or a stone jali, but here you have these balusters here, like how you have these on any balcony or a parapet, we get these balusters. So similarly, this window is kind of ornamented and with this, placement of these balusters at intervals. Okay. And these, of course, so this is the pilaster. Again, I want to emphasize on this. This is called the engaged pillar. These are not freestanding pillars. Okay. So this is, of course, the Jagmohan entrance I showed you earlier also. And these are the Shaiv Dwarpalas here. You can clearly see the Navgrahas, etc. And there is a figure here, which is that of Lakulish, okay, on the door lintel of Jagmohan. So which clearly shows that the temple is dedicated to the Pashupata sect of Shaivism. Then we will talk about, just very briefly, this is the Chausat Yogini temple, Hirapur, just outside on your way to, if you're going to Puri. from Bhubaneswar. This you will encounter on your way. So these are, of course, the tantric goddesses whose sculptures are set into the exterior niches and also inside also you will find them. So normally the yogini or the Chaussat yogini temples are normally, they are in this circular form. In fact, if we look at the Indian Parliament, the old one, of course, right now it's undergoing a lot of renovation, but it was inspired by the very structure of these Chaussat yogini temples. All right. So the very structure of the Chaussat yogini temples is basically, it depicts the yoni or the vagina or the reproductive organ of a female, because that's the function for which she is being venerated. Hana? It is this fertility aspect for which the women or the female power has always been worshipped across cultures in the world. Okay. So this temple is normally assigned to 11th century. In fact, some people also say assign a little earlier date, 10th century also. Somvanshi, or perhaps little earlier dynasty. So there is a small shrine in the center. I think I should take you inside before we talk about that. Okay, so this is the inside. So you have all the Chaussat yoginis placed along the periphery of the circle that we see. And then there is a Shiva or the Bhairav in the center, because normally we find that they all are always, in fact, there are all the female deities that we have in Indian pantheon. They all, in some form or the other, they also are part of this Chaussat yogini. They have the Maheshwari, Brahmani, Ganeshi, Chamunda, etc., etc. All these deities you will find as part of this in the cult of the Chaussat yogini. All right. And Chamunda I'm showing you in great detail here. Very, very fearsome, the goddess of death and decay. She dances on a jackal associated with the cremation grounds. Beneath her, flared, here, tiger skin you can see on top, the four-armed goddess, almost very, very emaciated body, the breasts are just pendentive and almost her skeleton is out, and she's holding a skull in her hand, one, garland of, she's also wearing a skull garland in her. And this is, of course, a severed head that she's holding in one hand here with other attributes. So there are, these tantric practices, there are two sects. I don't think we should get into that right now. So one is, of course, one common factor is that they consider the female power as the supreme power. All right. And that's how they end up worshipping the female deities. But there are further two sects in it. One is where they are not secretive about it. And the other Vampanthi is that where they are very, very secretive. So this is called the language that they talk about, or even the yoga, the tantric texts that are written, it's called the Sandhya Bhasha. All right. So for somebody who's not initiated into this particular religion or this sect of Hinduism, I would say, they would misinterpret what they are looking at. And I think I pointed out this in context with Khajuraho temples also, because sometimes when you're looking at some erotic sculpture, somebody who doesn't know what is the esoteric meaning of this particular sculpture, he will just look at it, probably enjoy the sexual, pleasure that he or she derives from that sculpture. But from looking at from the tantric point of view, sometimes it kind of depicts different kinds of yantras also, that which are being used in the tantric practices. Yeah. Then we'll talk about the Lingaraja temple, the very famous, grandest, loftiest, 150 feet high. And it has all the features of a fully evolved temple after a long evolutionary process in the recent temples, metamorphosis, how they have come a long way by this time. And it's a huge compound. There are many, many temples inside. It's a group of temples inside the enclosure that we have. It was built in 2 stages. The inscription on the wall gives the date of 1114 to 1115 CE. And Ganga dynasty, of course, was the one who confirms the upper limit of the temple, as the grant was for the maintenance of this particular temple. So, which means that the temple was already in existence, right? So, the very shikhar, the Rekha Deol of this almost, the entire, this can be viewed from very, very far, and it dominates the skyline. And it is constructed without any kind of mortar. All right. The joining material is not there. And so in fact, here we know that this is the original temple, the Jagmohan and the Rekha Deol. I will show you here. These were added later. So this is, of course, the Rekha Deol, the Jagmohan, the Nat Mandir and the Bhog Mandap, which become very, very intrinsic parts of Orison temples later. They were not the original additions. Much, much later they were added. And here you can see Shivling here in the center. And these are the Nisha shrines, they are called. Almost they are, covering the main Bhadra niches here. These are subsidiary shrines, but they are not standalone shrines that we have seen in other temples. And here also there are many, many different subsidiary shrines in the compound. But this is almost as a part of the Garbhagriha, which becomes a practice in later, temples. We find this in Konark temple. We find this in Anant Vasudeva temple, which is a Vaishnav temple. Normally, most of the temples that I've shown you right now, they all are Shaiv temples. So there was definitely, this particular sect was more prolific in constructing of temples. Probably the patronage came from such kings, etc., etc. So yeah, this is the, where you can see multiple temples here in the compound here. This is the main temple. And these are, of course, the Nat Mandir and the Bhog Mandap here, you can see here. And these are some of the erotic imagery that we have on the walls of the Lingaraja temple. Okay. And in fact, by now, there was a very much growing Vaishnav cult popularity. Okay. So on this temple, you will find Yashoda churning the curd with Krishna, or the Nisha shrines, which are added much later. They, they also have different kinds of sculptures here. So in that sense, Lingaraj is a combination of both Vishnu and Shiva. All right. In fact, the stambha in the front of the Bhog Mandap has both bull and Garud. All right. So, and the original Trishul on the Gandhi was replaced by half chakra and a trident. So in that sense, we know the Dwarpalas on the Nat Mandap are also Jaya Vijay, which are the Vaishnav, the Dwarpalas, or the guardians of Vishnu, for that matter. All right, the Vaishnav guardians. So images of Jagannath, Lakshmi Narayan were also there on the western side of the main temple, and on the northern side you have the Bhog Mandap. So, when you are circumambulating the entire temple, you will, encounter these images. Okay. So the sanctum has a Swayambhu Linga invoked as Harihara, the composite form of Vishnu and Shiva by the priest here. And of course, the leaves of the Bel Patra and Tulsi, both are being offered inside this temple. This is very, very interesting. So the Dola festival or the Jhulan festival was organized all in the Nat Mandap earlier, after returning from Rath Yatra, that we will talk about very, very soon. Yeah. So this is the very famous Jagannath temple, at Puri. The 4 holy dhams in Hindus, of course, the Badrinath, Rameshwaram, Dwarka, and the Jagannath Puri. established by Adi Shankaracharya. We all know this. And dedicated to Jagannath. This is the three siblings, which is also very unique feature of this particular temple. Normally, you will have Shiva, Shiva Parvati, Ram, Sita, Radha, Krishna. But this temple is dedicated to three siblings, Jagannath, Balbhadra, and Subhadra. And of course, Krishna, we know, one of the incarnations of the Vishnu, Dashavatars. And Balbhadra and Subhadra, of course, his siblings. Sometimes you have Balbhadra or Baldev also. Sometimes you will find him as one of the Dashavatars. Sometimes he is replaced by, I think sometimes Parshuram, or one of the Dashavatars are replaced by Balram also. So the very name Jagannath, right, that also is derived from, it has its root from Jagannath, the Lord of the world, all right, and is also known as the Mahaprabhu or the Purushottama temple. Okay. First, it was first built by the Eastern Ganga dynasty, and then Anantvarman was his name. And then, of course, then later, there were a lot of additions to this temple by later kings of the same dynasty, and afterwards by the Suryavanshi Gajapati dynasty. In fact, today also, the Gajapati king, he, flags off the Rath Yatra by, brooming the front of the Rath with a golden broom, in fact. Yeah. Okay. So this, we are looking at the backside of the Jagannath temple with the Vaikunt garden at the back. Yeah. So it's built typically in Orisan style, all the different features that we have seen. The Rekha Deol, Garbhagriha, Curvilinear Shikhar, the Jagmohan, and of course the Bhog Mandap and the Nat Mandir were later added later. It has a huge two boundary walls, or the prakaras, having 120 subsidiary shrines within the compound. East facing, there are 4 entrances to the door, to the temple on a very, very raised platform. Almost a near duplicate of the Lingaraja temple, though the sculptures and the very structure is not as refined in decoration as the Lingaraja temple. Jangha is divided again by Bandhana in 2 levels. Here you can clearly see the Pidha Deol of the Jagmohan, and this is the Rekha Deol here. And in fact, features of Garuda are grafted on Gajakrant Singha here on one of the entrances. Seated lions on the Beki, here you can see Beki. This is the Beki, the neck portion I've shown you. Here you find lions seating here. And there are Garuda figures also here. Jagmohan has 4 doors again. The deities inside are made of wood, which is again a very, very different features. Normally we have seen the metal images or the stone images, stucco images, etc., etc. Okay. So there are 4 entrances. We are looking at the Singhadwar here. All right. Eastern is, of course, the main doorway. Rest of them, the Ashvadwar. Ash means horse, Vyagra or tiger, and then the elephant. So all the other 3 also are, you will confront these different animals on these gateways, and that's how they are named. All right. So Singhadwara, in fact, this is the picture which was taken in 1870, showing the lion sculptures, if you can see here, lion sculptures with the Arun Stambha. Arun is the charioteer of the sun god. And this pillar in the foreground. And I will tell you from where this has come. So this Arun icon here, you can see on the top of this particular pillar here. It was actually brought from the Konark temple. All right. This is not the origin of this original structure of Jagannath Puri temple. It was brought from Konark temple much, much later. Another very interesting feature of this temple is it has the kitchen or the Rasoi Ghar, which is the largest in the world. All right. And which spreads over an acre, where there are 240 chulhas, or the earths as we call them, using charcoal and wood, and food is cooked in earthen pots. I mean, it's a it's a sight by itself. If you go to Puri, and you have to visit the kitchen of this temple to see how the prasadam or the bhog is being cooked. There are 1,000 cooks who prepare this particular bhog offered to the gods 6 times a day. So, which is very, very unique to this this particular temple. Then another very unique feature is the Navgunjar Arjun. This particular scene is sculpted on the northern wall of the temple. And also, this is the Neel Chakra on the top of the Shikhar, all right, disc made up of Ashtadhatu here. And this is the 8 Navgunjar figures that you are seeing, which are actually facing each other, right? This almost, looking upwards to the Shikhar here, right? And this, I'm trying to show you the detail of this figure here, which is, of course, here it is metal. This is a painting that I'm showing you of Navgunjar. So what is a Navgunjar, basically? Don't confuse it with Navakunjar. Kunjar is elephant, where you have the shape of an elephant and there are 9 females inside, in different postures. That's called a Navakunjar. This is Navgunjar we are talking about. And this actually is a composite form of Vishnu, okay, composed of 9 different beings, one of them being the human hand here that you can see. So these are the different animals that you will see here. Head of a cock, neck of a peacock, hump of a bull, body of a lion here, then legs of these 4, elephant, tiger, human hand, and deer, and tail is that of a snake. All right. So now what does it mean? So this form of Vishnu actually appeared in front of Arjun during his stay and penance in the Khandav forest in the Mahabharata. Okay. And seeing, this particular form earlier, of course, Arjun was very, very frightened. And then, of course, Vishnu took on his, actual form. And this is also called the Virat Roop of Vishnu in some sense. In fact, this particular episode also reiterates the limitations of human mind. And it kind of tells us that the universe is boundless and there are innumerable manifestations of energy that cannot be expressed or comprehended by human mind at all times. So this particular motif is also depicted on Ganjifa cards, the playing cards that you find in Odisha, handicraft, if you have been to the Raghurajpur village, just on your way to Puri from Bhubaneswar. Okay. So in these Ganjifa cards, the king, of course, is the king card is the Vishnu, and the minister card is that of Arjun. All right, that's the very interesting. So yes, so I just thought some trivia I will tell you about this particular temple. Then some living traditions. This we are looking at the deities inside the temple. Yeah, living traditions besides the morning and the evening rituals in the Jagannath temples are the Navakal Bheras. So what is this? This is very interesting that deities are almost treated like human beings, right? They go through the same cycle of life and death. So Navakal Bhera is the unique feature whereby, they get new embodiment, new bodies are being provided, and total replacement of the worshipped wooden idols are replaced with the new ones. The old idols are duly cremated like any human beings, and the new idols are placed in the sanctum after, performing due rituals, etc. So the reason for replacement of images in every 12 or 19 years in Jagannath temple is also attributed to some kind of astronomical or astrological consideration. So it's not any random number of years that we are talking about here. Okay. So the carving of the new images, the selection of the wood, the consecration, covering of the patta or the cloth, as well as painting takes place before the temple reopens on the occasion of the Rath Yatra, and the new deities are installed on the Rath Asans, all right, inside the Garbhagriha. So this is a huge event. Then second is, of course, the Rath Yatra. The Jagannath Yatra is also known as the Gundecha Yatra, because Gundecha was the name of the king Indradyumna's wife. In fact, in the Puranic story, if you Google, you will find this story very, very common. This is one of the most rarest and incredible spectacle that is being celebrated. The religious festivities are being, carried out with a whole lot of religious and great fervor each year, where more than 1 million people actually participate just to get the glimpse of the siblings Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balbhadra moving on a wooden chariot. It's a popular belief that the three siblings go to visit their Moshima, all right, for a week. So everywhere, every year, in fact, in the month of Ashar, the three deities are boarded in the newly built wooden rath or the chariot, and the Gajpati king comes and, brew with a gold broom, not golden, broom made of gold. He will, sweep the floor in front of the, rath horses, which are again made of wood. And then that's how the entire procession starts. And they go to the temple, the Gundeja temple, which is almost on the outskirts of the city limit. And they stay there for 7 days, after which the return journey starts, or the Bahuda Yatra, which is called. And once they reach the Jagannath temple after their return, they are decorated with Sonvesha. Sonvesha means which is the last ceremony, where the deities are adorned with gold ornaments, all right, on the chariots in front of the Singadwara, the main entrance, which is there. And it is basically for the devotees to admire this particular appearance of the Lord. Another very important thing I want to talk about Jagannath temple is the deity is, adorned in different kinds of textiles, or the veshas, on various occasions. Ceremonial cloth called the Geet Govind Feta. Geet Govind, we all know the text which was written by Jaidev. And in fact, there's a constant battle always that Jaidev was from Orissa and the Bengalis claim he's from Bengal, whatever. We are not getting into that controversy right now. But the classic Geet Govind, in fact, talks about the union of Atma and Paramatma. And the physical depiction of this is, of course, shown by the eternal love between Krishna and Radha. All right. And he desired to offer his Geet Govind to Lord Jagannath. And he could not think of any other medium except for a fabric, which could be in constant contact with the Lord, similar to the other, fabrics which were offered to the devotees. So, in fact, there are historical records which talk about Jagannath temple, right from, in the beginning of the 18th century, where Geet Govind was woven by ikat weavers into cloth which was donated to the temple. And in fact, this particular calligraphy, the script that is there, it is typical of Orissan ikat textiles, because these kind of curves, etc., are not cannot be attained or achieved where we have other ikat textiles like the patolas or the Andhra ikat, etc. So this is a typical feature of. In fact, the weavers who produce this fabric observe absolute purity during the entire period of production. And one set of this Geet Govind, Khandua Feta, as it is called, it consists of 15 pieces used for the three deities at night time of the Bada Shringar, or the big ornament, decorative embellishment, which, there is this ceremony which takes place, and the most attractive ritual which is there in the Jagannath temple. And now finally, the star temple amongst the Orissan temples, we have the Konar temple, one of the most well-renowned temples in India, and is a World Heritage Site. the name Konark is being derived from two words, the Kona or the corner and Arka, the sun. So naturally, the temple is dedicated to the sun deity. It is situated in the northeastern corner of Puri, or it's called the Chakra Kshetra. Okay. It's also known as Black Pagoda because of the height of this particular temple. The sailors in the sea could, see it from very, very long distance. All right. And in fact, the Jagannath Puri, it has been plastered white. And in contrast to this, that was called as the White Pagoda. Okay. So created on the banks of the sea and was often used as a landmark by the sailors, known as the Black Pagoda that I've told you. Okay. So very, very majestic in conception, is one of the most sublime monuments of India, in fact, in today. Famous as much for its imposing dimensions and faultless proportions, as also for the very harmonious integration of different architectural grandeur, and with their, the different sculptural details that we encounter in this particular temple. In fact, every inch of the temple is covered with sculptures of an unsurpassed beauty and grace. And in fact, we must have, many have seen the filigree work of Orissa and Andhra. So it is almost said that this, almost looks like the filigree work that we see in silver. In stone here, we can see in this particular solar wheel on the Konark temple here. Okay. So, built by King Narsingh Narsingh I, in fact, I would say 13th century, middle of 13th century of the Eastern Ganga dynasty. As an offering, it is said to commemorate the king's military victories, greatness, and his piety. Okay. So, of course, the temple faces east here, and it was conceived as a chariot. All right, the sun chariot of the sun god, Surya, carried upon 12 pairs, not just 12. So 12 wheels on this side, 12 wheels on this side, representing the months, and drawn by the 7 horses representing the days of the week. The 8 spokes of the wheel, in fact, depict the 8 prahars of 3 hours each. That's how the time was calculated in earlier times. And the most ambitious project of the Ganga period, I would say, artisans employed from all over Orissa, and this can be verified by the disparity that we see in different sculptures, sculptural work on the temple. And in fact, Abul Fazl, the chronicler in the Akbar court, in fact, he in Aine-Akbari, he in fact mentions that there were 12,000 workers who toiled for 12 years for them in the making of this particular temple. Now, of course, only the Jagmohan and some part of the platform and some niches, which are the Raha niches of the main Deol, have been saved right now. So this is, of course, the plan of the original temple, how it must have stood. So here, new thing is that we find the dance pavilion or the Nat Mandap and the Bhog Mandap, they are not connected with Jagmohan, as we saw in the Lingaraja temple. So only the Jagmohan here, or the Mandap here, and this is the main Garbhagriha. These are the 3 Nisha shrines I spoke about, the small subsidiary shrines, which becomes a routine in later temples, which kind of confront the main Bhadras, the Rahapagas here. These. So the sculptures that I show you of Surya images are not that of these Nisha shrines. They are housed in these particular niches of the main Garbhagriha. And this is the Jagmohan, and it can be approached from 3 sides by very, very long flight of steps here. Okay. So there are different temples, subsidiary temples here, Maya Devi temples, also known as the Gayatri temple, Pancharatha on plan and elevation with very, very multiple minor facets that you will find here. So this is a drawing which has been found on the palm leaf manuscript, which is dated to 1610. All right. So this is how it would have looked in its, full glory. This is the entire temple. Rekha Deol, you can see pouncing lions, you can see on all four sides. And these are the Bhumi Amlakas here, right? The Shukanasi, the main Rahapaga or the Bhadranish, the Karnas here, the Jagmohan, the Jalas, Jalvatayans here. This is entered from here. So there are four horses on one side and 3 horses on the other side. And you have 12 pairs of wheels going all around, right? So there are 3 stones basically which are used in the making of this particular temple. The chlorite for door frames, which is normally bluish greenish color. Then for the sculptures also the same stone was used. Laterite for the core of the platform, and the foundation and the enclosing wall. And the rest of the temple was built of chondrolite, which is a very, very porous stone. And that's how, which was very, very prone to oxidation. And that's how, we see this temple in today in such a ruined state in that sense. Okay. Okay. So this is, of course, the reconstructed structure of an artist, how it would have looked from the literary evidence like the palm leaf and etc., or some other religious treatise or the architectural treatises that have come down to us. And this is how it was drawn here. And now you can, figure out these are the Nisha shrines. I'm emphasizing so much on this because sometimes people mistake them as the protrusion of the main, the main Ratha here or the Rahapaga here. So this niche is separate, and these are the other Nisha shrines in all the 3 directions. And these are some of the subsidiary shrines here, the Nat Mandapa here, you can see, and the boundary wall here, all around here, right? Now here you can clearly see the Janga has 2 tiers. This is the Bandhana in between. Similarly, the Rekha Deol also. This is the Bandhana, the 2 registers of sculptures you have here. And the huge Amlaka on top. Okay, so the yellow portion that we see, this is what is remaining portion, which is the existing temple today. So to plant the Kalash on this, in its place, the copper bands, also known as the Chumbak Loha, that were, which were actually also means to load, it was a lodestone or a magnet which was employed. And hence, the myth that the lodestone, in fact, here up on the Gandhi is magnet. It is not true. All right. It was only the magnet was used for the placement of this Kalash so that it kind of occupies its proper place on the about the this bell element here. Okay, so it is said that Narsingh, the king was he kept forcing the architect to finish even during the rains so that he could consecrate or inaugurate the temple on the Magh Shukla Saptami, which is a very, very great festival of sun god. And much against the wishes of the Sthapati or the Sutradhar, the hurrying of the work and the difficulty in mounting of the Kalash on top resulted in the collapse of the Deol or this particular area later. All right. And when this area was set up, in fact, there were signs of instability right at that time. They were existing. So in early 17th century, in fact, the Gajasingha of the eastern facade, I told you in all the 4 directions, you have huge Gajasinghas stationed here. And the Gajasingha, in fact, on the eastern facade fell, crumbling on the eastern wall, right? And under its weight, breaking the puja image, which was there inside the Garbhagriha. And so we know that temple was in worship till early 17th century. And the temple collapsed after many years of worship, and it has been proven by 4 palm leaf manuscripts. In fact, by 19th century, only the Jagmohan and portion of the platform and these niches, in fact, these are the main niches, the Rapagas, have been saved that we see when we visit the temple today. Okay. This, I just thought I took a shot at this because this is it's showing the Saptaratha plan of the temple. I found this stone, right, which was there inside the compound of the temple in the shape of the Vastu Purush Mandal engraved on one of the stones here, right? Okay. So this is, here we are looking at the Nat Mandir, or the Nat Mandap here. This is, so very important to remember is, this is not the temple. All right, this is not the Garbhagriha. Very many people come back thinking that they have seen the main temple. No, as I told you, only very little part of the temple, which is the Rekha Deol, is in existence today. This is the Jagmohan that we normally will go and visit, and the door frame that we look at, made up of chloride stone green. That's the main door of the Jagmohan. Okay, not that of a main Garbhagriha. So this is the platform of the Nat Mandir I'm trying to show you, where there are various dancers and musicians that are, and this is the condolite, the stone that I'm talking about, very, very porous. So that's why it's very prone to oxidation, especially the sea breeze, which comes and it kind of corrodes the stone which is there. And this is the famous Gajakranta Singha, or the Gaja Singha I showed you earlier also, which was earlier placed at the entrance of the Jagmohan, which has now been moved at the entrance of the Nat Mandir. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay. So,
Madam, thak gayi hongi aap.
No, I'll just finish. This is the most interesting part. Just few slides we have got. Right. So this is the Nisha shrine, and these are the main Bhadra images that I want you to look at. So the 3 Surya images in 3, main rathas that we have, and different aspects of Shiva, of Surya we have here. And also the lower Anartha niches have of the Deol and the Jagmohan both. They have the images of the patron king, the Narsingh one. So in fact, it is not a new thing in Indian art. Kingship is often equated to godship, and many a times some of the main Garbhagriha deities are also named after the king, like how we have the Rajeshwara or the Choleshwara deity at the Bradishwara temple. And here you have these different sculptures from the walls of the temple, where Narsingh Van is shown in different, in different activities. He's seated on a swing, he's worshipping a linga, he's shown as an archer, he's, giving a shiksha dan, etc., etc. So in fact, all these images right now are part of a site museum, and I think 4 of these images are present in National Museum also. So these are the various Khakra Mundis and the Vajra Mundis that I was talking about as the decoration on the capping the different niches here. So this is actually the platform, or the Jagati, which has these 3 layers of sculptures here, which has some erotic sculptures, the Alaskanyas or the Madanikas as they are called, the Vyala figures, etc., etc. you will find it. So this is the Vajramundi here, the Khakra Mundi, and on top you have the Pida Mundi here. These are again some of the very typical Orisen decorations. Interesting part I want to show, you have a giraffe here. Now, giraffe is not an indigenous animal to India. So it definitely gives you some economic, gives you a sense of some economic activity which was prevailing at that time. This is, at the platform of the Garbhagriha. And also you have an elephant, which has been carried inside a boat. In fact, there is a very famous story about how this elephant, just as it was being shifted from one boat to the other, it fell into the water. And I think we'll save that for another time. So, of course, the wheels are richly ornamented, 8 major spokes and 8 minor spokes. All right. And they almost look like, string of pearls to me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is the detail of the horses that I want to see. I want you to look at. They try to pull the great temple chariot. So entire temple is made in the form of the ratha. And I showed you the Arun pillar, which was present here, was taken away to the Jagannath temple by the later kings, which was originally installed inside the Konark temple. The 7 horses, there are different explanations. They have been named after the 7 chandas in the Samved, right? The different names that are given to them, the Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, etc., the Pangati, Trishtup, Jagati. These are the names of the different chandas in Samved, all right. And 7 colors which are also visible in the rainbow, the Vibgyor. The horses are named after the different names accordingly, the Indranil, Unil, Harit, Pita. These are the different Kausumba. These are the different names which are given to the 7 horses, right? And they also are said to correspond to the 7 days of the week, right? Of course, no survey of Konark is complete without, a photograph of one of these celebrated wheels that we have. Okay, the wheels, they say that they correspond to the 12 signs of the zodiac, and and the 24 hours that we've already spoken about, the 24 ratha, the wheels. Then this is the detail of the Jagmohan that we are looking at. Divided into 3 lots of, many dancers and musicians, they occupy this particular area here. And it is actually the monumentality of this, and this temple that is so overbearing and so very, out of this world, I would say that. This is the entrance of the Jagmohan here. And this is the chlorite stone entrance door that we encounter here. And these are the details of the dancers and the musicians on top of the Jagmohan. This is the very, very beautifully carved entranceway, where again you have the different Dwarpalas, the Ganga Yamuna figures, the entwined serpentine, these Nag-Nagini figures, the vegetal motifs, the Mithunas, etc. you will find. All right. Very, very highly decorative and elaborate decoration you have here. So this is the Sandhi Sthal that I'm trying to show you between the Garbhagriha and the Jagmohan, where you will find these Vyala figures also, and some of the erotic figures are also placed on this particular Sandhi. So Surya actually has been a Rigvedic deity, alternating with Vishnu, Surya, the source of light, warmth, life. It stood for time and also for cosmic dynamics. In fact, Surya's sculptures begin to pour in from around the early centuries of this era, the Common Era. We have seen Surya images in Kushan period also, and the dagger carrying Uditya Vesha, which I have been talking about, the northwestern, where he's wearing a jacket and a kilt, the boots, etc. In fact, they have all been influenced by the especially the Iranian and the Greek influence, which is there in this particular costume. And it is only later images of Surya where he's shown in Indianized form, but still you will find him wearing boots. So these are the very beautiful Surya images that we find on these are not the Garbhagriha image. As I told you, Garbhagriha image was destroyed by the fall of that Gajasingha, right? So these are the Surya images which are there in the main 3 Bhadra niches of the Garbhagriha, which are still present, and you can go and enjoy them. Okay, remarkable for their iconography, size, and super craftsmanship. Mitra, so I think we all know the Dwadashadityas, and so Mitra is one of them, the Pushan. So Mitra is on the south, Pushan on the west, on a chariot, and Bhaskara or the Dharma Murti or the Haridashva is in the north on the golden horse. So this is he's not riding a chariot, whereas these two are shown riding him on a chariot. So each deity is placed in the front of a trefoil arch here. Again, you see a lot of Gandharan influence here, just as you see the boots of the deity. Now here you can very clearly see, Hana, do you see these long boots, which are so typical of the Greek soldiers? Yeah. So, of course, if you look at the frame or the parikar here, there are two consorts of Surya on each side, then Usha, Pratyusha here you can see, they are kind of shooting an arrow, right? Warding off the darkness. But the most interesting part is you can see the Acharya and the King Narsingh, one also, at the base of the pedestal in the posture of worshipping. And there is, of course, the two Dwarpalas here on the two sides here. So very, very iconographically, very, very rich sculptures these are, I would say that. Then this is one sculpture from British Museum we have of Surya, and probably the original image of Surya. This is not the original image. Let me tell you again, this is an image which was, found from the site of this particular temple, which is present in British Museum. And this image is, of course, from the subsidiary shrine of Maya Devi or Mahagayatri. I showed you that subsidiary shrines on the southern side of the main temple here. Okay. So, of course, the image, the main Mool Vigraha or the Mool Bhera, as we call it, has not survived, but a palm leaf illustration, in fact, depicts deity in Padmasan on a chariot holding long-stemmed two lotuses. So that's how we know that, So there is a confusion as to how long the image, remained in situ within the sanctum, pertaining to the fall of the Gajasingha, which fell, and okay. And the last image I want to show you, the very, very prized possession of National Museum. So very, minutely carved. And again, many people, many art historians, they mistake this image as being the main Garbhagriha image of Konark temple. Please let me tell you, for the sake of repetition, this is not the original Surya image from the Garbhagriha. All right. However, this is, in fact, it was found in the Nat Mandir, but probably likely as a Parsh Devta in the West Raha niche of Mahagayatri temple, the subsidiary shrine. Okay. But it was later shifted to National Museum for safety and better upkeep. So here you can see typical iconography of Surya here, the boots here, the Surya, attending figures, the Aruna, the 7 horses at the pedestal, the 2 consorts here. Yeah, Sanjana and another one, I'm forgetting the other name. However, the 2 fully blown lotuses, which actually the arms are broken here. So he was supposed to be holding these. The flying Vidyadharas on top, the trefoil arch here. So this actually completes the story. The face of the deity, in fact, seems to glow with almost inner delight and a very subtle smile on the lips. With that, I'm going to conclude. And I'm very tempted to, show you whatever, that will interest you. And I hope, you found it interesting enough. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. There are a lot of other things I could go on and on, talking about, but I think we have a lot of restraint time. Yeah. Okay.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और मुझे तो आपकी चिंता है कि हमको अभी आगे भी सुनना है कि
Oh,
आप
no,
भी
that's okay. That's fine. Yeah.
आपके इस व्याख्यान के बाद हमको भारत के गौरव के लिए एक गाथा कहना पड़ रही है कि धन्य है हमारा भारत देश, धन्य है इसकी यह कला और उसके उपासक हम लोग धन्य हैं, और भारत की यह परंपरा बहुत ही धन्य है और हम अपने आप को गौरवान्वित महसूस करते हैं। अभी तो हमने उड़ीसा का दर्शन किया है, 1.5 घंटे में किया है। ऐसा लगता है कि पूरा जीवन भी इसका सूक्ष्म अध्ययन करते रहे तो कभी पूरा नहीं होगा। तो इसके लिए देखिए, जो हमारे पुण्यकर्ता दातार लोगों का भी बहुत बड़ा योगदान रहा है, जिनके कारण से यह मंदिर बने हैं। फिर आज का भी जो कार्यक्रम हो रहा है उसमें भी हम अपने 4 दातारों के प्रति कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हैं। एक श्री राजकुमार जी ओसवाल परिवार, श्री निर्मल भोगीलाल जी मुंबई का परिवार, और स्मृति से धनेश जी के स्मृति में उनका परिवार, तथा मातु श्री राजकुमारी जी की सुमीर चंद जी का परिवार, जिनके कारण से हम यह कार्यक्रम आज सुन पा रहे हैं, देख पा रहे हैं। और मैम के प्रति पुनः कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करते हैं, और सबसे ज्यादा कृतज्ञता अपने दर्शकों के प्रति, श्रोताओं के प्रति करते हैं कि वो धैर्य के साथ किस तरह से वो इसको गंभीरता से सुन रहे हैं। अगला हमारा जो सेशन होगा वो 8 तारीख को नहीं होगा होली के कारण से, 11 तारीख को इसी शनिवार को होगा, और हम लोग उसमें बंगाल और आसाम के दर्शन करेंगे, और निश्चित रूप से इसी तरह से हम लोग लाभान्वित होते रहेंगे। मैं पुनः
Thank you, and thank you all of you for bearing with me for this longer duration. Yeah, and yes, thank you very much.
सभी को धन्यवाद, शुभ रात्रि। धन्यवाद।